Hello and welcome to Steps to Maths. Today we're going to be talking about constructions and we will be using the printer paper that I asked you to get last week. So we'll need our construction tools. So you're going to need something that looks like this. We're going to need our set of construction implements. We're going to need a protractor and we are going to need a ruler. Now there are 15 constructions that we need to learn how to do, but before we can do them we're going to look at basically how to draw something on a sheet of paper. So I'm going to be asking you exercises, and in order to do the exercises you're going to need to draw various things on the sheet of paper. So let's say, for example, I asked you to draw an angle at 30 degrees, and the two lines that I want you to have the 30 degrees between, I'm going to tell you to draw one of them, for example, to be 8 centimeters long. So we pick a particular point here. We're going to measure 8 centimeters with our ruler from that point up to here. So we get our ruler nicely aligned. We measure 8 centimeters to here, to this particular point here. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do then is I'm going to ask you to draw another line at a particular angle from this point here. The way that you do that is you get your protractor, you put your protractor so that this line here is on the line you've just drawn. See that there? You can see quite clearly if it's off the line or on the line, and there it's on the line. Now when we want to draw an angle, we draw an angle at a particular point. So we want these crosshairs here to be at our point that we want to draw the angle from. So you can see now that I have this line here along the line that I've drawn. My crosshairs are exactly at the point from which I want to draw my angle. And then along here I can figure out how to draw my angle. Now I want to draw an angle to begin with at 50 degrees. This is the 50 degree place. You can see that there, because we're going to be starting on this line. We're going to be starting at 0 and increasing 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Now to draw that, I go to the outside where the equivalent of 50 is, and I mark that there. Then I get my ruler and I draw a line from this point through that point that I've marked. So now I have an angle of 50 degrees measured out. Now in order to be able to check that you got this correct, I've asked you already to mark out 8 centimeters on this line. I will ask you to measure some other distance on the other line that you've drawn. Again, you'll be measuring exactly from this point that you've measured the angle from. So for example, I might ask you to measure out 7 centimeters. So you can see there I've gone from 0 right here at the point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 centimeters along, and I've marked a point on that line. What I will ask you to do then, in order to answer the question, is I will ask you to measure the distance from this point to this point. So you get your ruler, you put your 0 at the first point, you figure out exactly where this is on this point here. And you can see, if you were able to see the ruler quite closely. So I've zoomed in a little bit there, and we can see a little bit better with the camera that I've counted along. That's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, that's 5, that's 6. This would be 7. So how far along am I? I'm 6.1, 2, 3. So this is approximately 6.3 centimeters. So when I ask you to give the distance, I will ask you to draw one leg, which is 8 centimeters. I will ask you to draw an angle of whatever the angle is. In this case, it's 50 centimeters. I will ask you to measure another distance here, which in this case I think was 7 centimeters. Is that right? It was 7 centimeters. And then finally, I will ask you to measure the distance from this point, where you've measured 7 centimeters, to this point where you've measured 8 centimeters, and as carefully as you can to measure that distance. Then I will ask you to put your answer on the website. In the exercises, I will ask you to enter that 6.3 centimeters answer for your question into the page. But the idea is anyway that this is constructions. I'm asking you to be able to draw a line, nice straight line. You're using a ruler. I will ask you to use your protractor. This is the protractor here. Remember that we want our crosshairs to be perfectly aligned there. We want that line here, the zero, where it says 0 degrees, to be perfectly in line with our line there. So we go get that just perfect there. My crosshairs need to be exactly at that crosshair. And then I can measure my 50 degrees here. That's that line. That line continues through to the 130. So I can mark that point with my pencil. And then I can get my ruler, draw a line through there. And you'll notice one of the things that I do is when I'm drawing a line, I draw a line right through the point, out the other side, or right through the point and out the other side. So this is a particular point, we might label it O. This is another point, we might label it B. This is our first point, we might label it A. When we draw from O to B, we will usually draw our line right through that point and out the other side. And that makes it easier for us when we want to measure that distance there. Okay, so when we measure that distance, we measure 7 centimeters and mark it off. And then finally, we can measure off the exact measure that we want. So what I'm asking you to learn here is how to very carefully draw really straight lines. So we're going to be using nice clean printer paper. We're going to be using a ruler. We're going to be using a protractor. We're going to be using a pencil. Make sure it's nice and sharp so that you get nice clean lines. Normally when we want to measure a distance, we would also use a compass, but we won't bother doing that in this situation. So that's what you're going to be asked to do. You're going to ask to draw a picture like that. You're asked to measure that distance, and you're going to put that answer into the exercise that you're doing, and you'll get your score for that. Okay.